Welcome to Heavy Hands. I'm your host, Connor Rebush. With me, as always, is Phil McKenzie. Phil, is it ever jarring to you when I sort of turn it on for the show?
It always is. It's always just this spasm of like horror and revulsion runs through me, but I keep it down like the pro I am.
Yeah, you mean like it's sort of awe and you're impressed, and because it's like you're talking to a normal guy, your friend, your best friend, and then suddenly he just becomes this beacon of raw charisma.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Thank you. Welcome to Heavy Hands. We're talking today about this upcoming UFC Fight Night card, which, by my reckoning, is looking pretty solid, actually. The main event it's questionable whether it's a main event. Alexa Grasso versus Viviane. I am going to struggle trying to say Araujo, which I think is the correct pronunciation. I'm just going to start saying Araujo, okay? It's Alexa Grasso versus Viviane Araujo. And a good fight. I like the matchup. It doesn't really feel like a main event. I can't even exactly put my finger on why that is. But it's a good fight, and it's on top of several other good fights. We've got Jonathan Martinez versus Cub Swanson. I like that matchup a lot. Askar Askarov versus Brandon Royval. Again, phenomenal top contenders fight in the flyweight division. We've got, Misha Serkinov versus Alonzo Menefield is not the one I wanted to mention, but I did just notice it. There's Mana Martinez, Brandon Davis looks fun. Unfortunately, Raphael Assuncao versus Victor Henry is happening. That's very cruel. But Nick Maximov, Jacob Malkoun, and Pierre Rodriguez, Sam Hughes. I would say there are nearly 8 solid fights on this card, and that is more than good enough for any fight night card, in my opinion.
It's a good fight night card without going over the boundaries of like what you would expect it. You know, you wouldn't be like, man, this is a good fight night card. You're just like, yes.
Yeah. It's McDonald's, you know. It's exactly what you ordered. You didn't expect it to be a filet mignon. You expected McDonald's, and you ordered it because you like it. This is good. I just make sure we eat it as soon as, like, in the car.
Yeah.
Because we're going to forget about this 2 days after it happens. So you were going to dive into the main event. Grasso versus Araujo. What do you say?
If you looked at this based on the like structure of how divisions work and how contenders work and so on, main event positioning makes sense.
Yeah.
Because this is simply a functioning of women's flyweight sucking. Because Alexa Grasso has she's gone undefeated at the weight class. She's been steadily moving up in terms of competition. She's done better every time, and she finished her last fight. She's in a light division without many title challenges. She just needs to get one more win.
Yeah,
I mean, and frankly, this is possibly even, overkill for flyweight.
Yeah.
You really need more than 3 okay wins to get a title shot in this division?
You like evidence suggests you definitely don't. That is exactly the number of wins you need, and no more.
Yeah, so she's actually kind of taking the hard route. She's fighting an actual sort of athlete. And, yeah, I mean, this is presumably a contender's fight for her.
Yeah, I mean,
if it is... I think it is for Araujo, but... Yeah, so this is, and were it in almost any other division, you'd be thinking, yeah, I can see why. If there's a clear number 1 title shot in almost any other division, you'd be like, yes, This is a fight, my main event right here.
Yeah, it meets the, like, logical parameters for what makes a main event. It's simply that flyweight sucks, and that you just know what, like, the result is going to be if somebody does win a fight like this. And so it's like, oh, all right. And the other contender here on this card, the other contenders rather, are Askar Askarov and Brandon Royval. That's also, it meets the same exact parameters for a main event, and likewise does not feel like a main event. Mostly because the UFC will never ever have a flyweight main event that isn't a title fight, and even then, flyweight title fights as main events are vanishingly rare. They usually have a literally bigger title fight over top of them. So, yeah, you got like
all pay-per-views are pretty much double title fights now. So
yeah,
unless they're like comedy ones, like the recent one with
Ferguson and Diaz,
and so on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Most of the time it's done, and yeah, the flyweights are made to slot into the second position.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's enough of the
sure
competitive structure around it. Let's talk the fight. So Viviane Araujo seems like she's like a fairly well-rounded aggressive fighter. She's moderately athletic, and all of this immediately puts her a cut above almost everyone else at flyweight.
For sure. She's fast. She hits reasonably hard. She's strong. We can get into this, but I think the more I've seen her, the less athletic she seems. The less impressive as just a raw athlete. Like, she's not Yoel Romero. She's like Leon Edwards level athleticism.
Yeah, that seems about right for the division.
Like, perfectly solid, definitely a high-level athlete. But as I've watched footage on both of these women, I kind of think Alexa Grasso seems like exactly in the same category.
Yes.
And she's also fast. She showed against Macy Barber. She's more than strong enough, even up here at flyweight, to tangle with some... I mean, Macy Barber is quite strong, actually, for the division. She's probably... right behind Valentina in terms of actual raw physical power.
And there's also Maya and Andrade, but yes.
Oh, Andrade, of course. But she's in that class. She's very strong, and Grasso, with a combination of technique but also her natural athleticism, she hung with her perfectly well in the clinches until the very end of the fight when Barber did what Barber does in third rounds and managed to kind of exhaust her and just pressure her to pieces. The reason for me that I have always thought of Araujo as like an incredible athlete is that she has an athlete's style. She has the style of somebody who has been relying on their athleticism for a long time, and as such has developed very little of the structure that less athletic fighters need to develop to even compete. And you don't say that about Grasso, which instantly seems like a bad sign for Araujo, because Grasso's a solid athlete just like Araujo, but she has a pretty functional game. With all the little connecting pieces, she's got the basics of footwork. She knows how to jab. She knows how to put combinations together. She keeps her feet when she's punching. She can counter. She can do basic defensive things. That's a really big contrast between them is defense.
Yeah, that I think is what really defines the matchup for me. That's the differentiator, I think.
Yeah.
Because, Araujo's fight with Andrea Lee is one of the most defensively void fights I've seen, certainly in recent memory, but maybe ever.
Yeah.
Just in terms of two bolt upright people just trading punches and landing whenever they threw. And it ends up being, oddly enough, Araujo's ground game and just her ability to throw more punches than Lee, which kind of ended up clinching it for her because she got almost wiped out right at the start of the fight.
Yeah.
By simply walking into a huge punch into a head kick.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Grasso isn't. She's not bad defensively. I mean, she's not good, but as you said, like she keeps her feet with her, moves. She picks off shots with her. She picks off shots with her hands and moves her head. I mean, sorry, and moves her head at the same time. She can counter. She doesn't throw everything into every shot. Does seem like one of those performances where when they're on the feet, I do expect Grasso to be kind of carving her up.
Yeah, I think Grasso will have an innate advantage, and I also expect her to be able to build on that as long as they keep striking. She's pretty good at that.
Yeah. So, and Araujo's kind of takedown game did actually look okay against them, really. I mean, again, it seemed to be aided by the fact that Lee looked abysmal.
Yeah.
And just, like, directionally aimless, tired pretty quickly, and couldn't see a takedown coming. But thought Araujo's entries looked okay. I do think it's worth like noting that Grasso did get tired out by Macy Barber.
Yep.
Still not. She wasn't a massive. Grasso, I think, is a bit like Nathaniel Wood in that she wasn't a massive strawweight, and I don't think she's a big.
No.
She's not a big fly. You know, she hasn't grown into being a flyweight. She's clearly one of those people that, for whatever reason, just cannot cut the weight to fit in, to sort of fit into the class that seems to either one for her.
Right.
So yeah, she should have a significant size edge, but Araujo is aggressive and wild enough that I could see her wearing Grasso down towards the end of the fight in the same way that Barber did.
Yeah. Let me actually check the dimensions here. Araujo
they're the same height.
Okay.
Which is weird because apparently they are. Because I think of Araujo as being taller and lankier.
Tapology has Grasso an inch taller, but with Araujo having 2 inches of wingspan on her. So they'll probably functionally seem like they are of exactly the same dimensions. Yeah. Yeah, that it's a concern for Grasso. I mean, you can take that fight both ways. Like did she sort of suffer a Barber third round? Yeah. She didn't get blown out the moment that turn started to happen like an even smaller and less athletic fighter like, say, remind me of her name. I'm embarrassed. I can't think of it right now. I like her. She's redheaded. She's Rose Namajunas' sparring partner. Come on.
I don't know.
You know, you know who it is.
Oh.
Okay, we'll think of it. We'll think of it. She didn't get exploded by Barber doing what she does, which is to get crazy aggressive and start running forward and putting everything into every single punch. JJ Aldrich.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I realized at exactly the same moment that you did.
Yeah, there were actually several attempts from Barber to sort of overwhelm her. And for the most part, I think you could also take the positives out of that matchup. That Grasso held it together. She didn't get hurt. Like, she showed a chin. She also showed an ability to sort of take the heat off of punches even when she had to eat them. She showed good countering. And until that third round, I thought she looked more than imposing enough physically to hang with Barber, who, again, I think is physically just stronger. She's not as quick or agile as Araujo, but I think she's probably stronger. She's big. So, I think, yeah, it's a cause for concern, but also it's a test that Grasso
particularly
passed.
over 5 rounds, I think.
For sure. Yeah. So far, it is a test that Grasso has passed, but with some concerns. Yeah, that's the way I would view it. But then you also have other Araujo fights beyond the Andrea Lee one, which was the first time, by the way, we've seen her do that much wrestling and grappling. because she almost got knocked out. The fight before, she took on Caitlin Chukagian and made her look like Jose fucking Aldo. I talk about this kind of dynamic often when two fighters just have the same exchange over and over, and no one seems to have any idea how to either extend or interrupt those exchanges or enter them with different ideas on a different rhythm, a different setup, throwing an empty beat into the middle of your combination. All these ways that you can sort of insert variety into basic punching exchanges. And there are a lot of these fights where that just doesn't happen. Usually that's like both fighters doing that. Usually it's not one person jumping into the same punch face first over and over and over again, and just having no recourse but to keep doing so. That was Viviane Araujo against Caitlin Chukagian.
And that is one of the more dispiriting things about flyweight is the fact is it's not just the distance of Shevchenko from the rest of the division.
Yeah,
it's the massive difference between pretty much Caitlin Chukagian and Jessica Andrade and the rest of the division.
Right. So I think, in a couple ways, Chukagian is a decent parallel for Grasso. She's not hugely physically strong. She's bigger, but she's more awkward. She's not as fast. And yeah, Araujo literally did not know how to close the distance. She didn't know how to not just run into the jab over and over and over. She landed some shots. It's not like she was out of the fight, but she also couldn't really get into it. She didn't feint. She didn't try even any tricky footwork. She didn't come in throwing combinations looking to land the final shot. It was one idea, and you could see that idea coming from a mile away because, again, she literally leapt into the pocket every time she entered. Bad footwork, bad boxing. And the bad defense was on full display because of these things. Because, again, Chukagian was just able to time every single idea Araujo had. That's bad. Lately, Grasso has been reminding me of, Bobby Knuckles a bit.
Huh?
Especially fighting these bigger women. That she actually seems like a sharper puncher here than she often did down at strawweight. And has been getting
a little Nathaniel Woody there.
Exactly. And has been landing a lot more on the counter because a lot of these fighters think they can overwhelm her, and she will just nail them with two really sharp punches and then reset. And she's going to be able to hit Araujo constantly at distance. And Araujo literally, when she feels herself losing, is going to throw herself into it because unless she's learned something new, she doesn't know another way to try to assert herself on the fight as long as it remains standing. So the big question really is, if Araujo could take down a shitty version of Andrea Lee, but couldn't take down Caitlin Chukagian, can she take down Alexa Grasso?
I think one of the main differences between Chukagian and Grasso is that Grasso is trying to play a harder game than Chukagian is a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Chukagian is just trying to circle and draw people onto her reach,
right? Essentially.
Whereas Grasso is actually trying to box with people.
She's happy to mix it up.
Will mean that whatever will happen. Araujo is going to be able to have exchanges with her rather than just chasing the whole time and running into things.
I think that's true.
I still think, my general feeling is just that she's going to be too open for counters. And that at certain points, I think Grasso has had issues with consistency, throughout her career.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's also a bit of the Leon Edwards kind of vibe, where I think she just wants to play a very complicated version of fighting,
Mm-hmm.
and it sometimes just she just gets mentally tired.
Yeah.
And yeah, I can 100% see like that there's going to be dicey moments over 5 rounds.
I think that's definitely what it was against Barber too. I think more than physical exhaustion.
Mm-hmm.
It was she just wanted a mental breather. She wanted Barber to give her a moment of space so she could reset, and that's what Barber didn't allow it. When she wasn't clinching, she was literally just chasing Grasso. And the moment they would break a clinch, Grasso would immediately start retreating, which is a sure sign that what she should have done was held her ground and traded 5 punches and tried to scare Barber off. She'd already hurt her in the fight. Again, looking like a pretty serious puncher so far at flyweight. But yeah. But I don't know if... Yes, Araujo can do that, but I don't know that she really has that ability to keep on pressure. I mean, I would have loved to see her sort of go apeshit against Chookagian, but she didn't.
But that's the thing. I don't think she necessarily needs to have pressure, because I just think that I think that Grasso's style just is going to leave her.
I see.
In engagement range, pretty much the whole time.
I see.
No, it's like Robbie Lawler. He just had to take breaks all the time.
Yeah.
Because he'd just have chunks where he would just sort of give his brain time to cool down.
That makes sense.
And I think she doesn't really have that. She hasn't learned that about herself, that she needs to recoup and give herself time to sort of mentally recover.
And she doesn't have quite the depth of like outside boxing ability to like make that happen.
Yes.
Like if you, as Barber showed, if you really want to run Grasso over, she doesn't have enough like tight pivots. Her defense isn't that good for her to be able to just play off the back foot and play Matador.
Yeah. I mean, I guess my first two most likely outcomes of the fight would be, I think she wins a fairly clear decision with a couple of dicey moments.
Yeah.
I think there's a non-zero chance that she just wipes Araujo out.
Sure. Yeah. I think she could sleep her. If she can hit her as easily as Chookagian did with more meaningful punches, I think she could knock. I mean, Araujo almost got deaded in a minute by Andrea Lee. Granted,
no kind of finisher.
Right. Granted, a clean head kick. I mean, from anybody, that's going to hurt you. But
I mean, it was the clean. Was it a left hook and then the head kick sort of while she was recovering? But yeah, I think Grasso is a more natural finisher than Andrea Lee is by any means.
Grasso's got 3 very good power punches and a sharp jab. But yeah, she rocked Macy Barber with an uppercut left hook combination and had her on rubber legs. You can hit Araujo with those kinds of things. So yeah, I more or less agree. I think it's a compelling matchup. It doesn't quite have that main event zing feeling of significance to it, but it's not the fault of the fighters or even the matchmakers, really. I mean, it's good booking.
Yeah, and potentially we'll get one of the rare, actually semi-compelling Valentina Shevchenko title defenses out of it.
Sure. I'd like to see, honestly, either of these women against Shevchenko. I mean, I would like to see it at least until I've watched 7 minutes of it and figure out what's happening.
Yeah. I wouldn't mind watching 7 minutes of it.
Yeah. And then I could do whatever I want. So yeah. Both of us picking Grasso by a dicey decision.
I think, clear decision with like at least one moment where you're like, ah.
Yeah, one big moment, and then also possibly a moment where Araujo like catches a kick or something and gets a takedown and shows off some of that positional grappling. Because Grasso's really aggressive off her back. She can hit some really slick transitions. She upkicks like a demon. just to like create chaos the moment she's down. She doesn't accept the position, even though she's a bit of a guard player. But she is not the level of positional grappler that it seems like Araujo is. I was very impressed with Araujo's dominant positional grappling against Andrea Lee.
I mean, she's well rounded. It's just kind of not necessarily raw, but crude everywhere. I think, apart from
exactly unrefined
position.
Okay, well, both of us taking Grasso. I mean, what does it matter? I'm actually going to say Grasso by TKO, just because that's the most fun thing that could possibly happen.
Bro.
Yeah, who cares? Okay, let's take a break then. When we come back, again, we've got a myriad interesting matchups on this undercard. We're certainly going to be hitting Martinez versus Swanson and Askarov versus Royval after this.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to this week's Heavy Hands. If you like what you hear, please consider pledging to support the podcast on Patreon. Patreon is basically continuous crowdfunding. You sign up to contribute a certain amount per month to help us with production costs and the like, and in return you get rewards ranging from a mention on the Heavy Hands website to a question or topic of your choice being discussed on the show. We have a lot more in the works to reward you for your help, and we appreciate every contribution. No amount is too small. Just head over to patreon.com and find how you can help out, the only show dedicated to the finer points of face punching. Now let's get back to it.
All right, ladies and gents, welcome back to Heavy Hands. We are moving through the undercard here onto Jonathan Martinez versus Cub Swanson, a matchup that I actually liked a lot more before I sort of the wires uncrossed in my head. And Phil and I figured out that this is happening at bantamweight. Of course, Jonathan Martinez is a bantamweight.
I mean, so he's missed weight bantamweight, and he's fought at featherweight before. So just like logically, be like he's the younger fighter. Surely this is a featherweight. I didn't even think that it would be Cub moving down.
Maybe just before we fully invest in this, maybe Tapology's wrong. I'm going to check the ESPN card page and make doubly sure that, oh my God, there's so many ESPN links, none of which are the card. Make doubly sure that this is happening at bantamweight.
No, it says Cub Swanson set for bantamweight debut.
There you go. So yeah, Cub Swanson at 38 years old is, I think, for the first time ever, unless there was something much, much earlier in his career, but certainly for the first time in like over a decade, he has decided to drop down to bantamweight. Why?
I just can't imagine. I mean, he's looked fine lately.
Yeah,
he's just like beating okay people. He's losing to, top 10, 15 level talent.
His time as an elite gatekeeper has an incredibly long tail because he's just a really good fighter.
Yeah, he used to be a gatekeeper for the top 5. Now he's a gatekeeper for the top 15.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine. He can fight Andre Fili or whatever. He could be people that are fun fights, or he can continue to be a gatekeeper. I have no idea.
He should be fighting Charles Jourdain right now.
Mm-hmm.
At this very instant. Obviously, that's a fight to make. But yeah, he's dropping to bantamweight. So our theory is essentially that because he hasn't really experienced anything other than I guess fighting Giga Chikadze, who must have felt huge because he is. Chikadze was full 4 inches taller with 4 inches of reach and super long legs as well. But other than that,
Brian Ortega, obviously.
Well, yeah. There's plenty of,
but there's nothing in recently.
What's the really compelling reason to try dropping down? My assumption has to be that maybe he just felt he could do it. Like maybe usually fighters will do an experimental weight cut first when they're making a change like this, and maybe he did so, and it just wasn't bad. So he's like, yeah, why not? I feel fine at 135. Could be. He's not tiny. He's bigger than Charles Jourdain, I bet, but he's also not a big featherweight. He no longer feels like the size of a modern featherweight, if that makes sense.
I mean, Martinez doesn't look like a massive bantamweight, but he's the same height as Cub Swanson.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like Cub has, to be fair to him, I guess, he's been smaller than Shane Burgos, Brian Ortega, Giga Chikadze. I mean, there's been enough of more modern sized featherweights to maybe make it seem like, yeah, bantamweight is a good division. So I don't know. That's obviously one of the major X factors here that we just have to get out of the way early. We don't know how it's going to affect Cub. We have our usual guesses. People's reaction times look slower. Sometimes they seem chinnier. Sometimes they look like bigger punchers, but sometimes they just look slower. It's hard to say until we see it.
At 38, I'm 100% expecting him to look slower.
It doesn't seem like a good idea. But there's also been recent examples where somebody's been too old for the weight cut, and we're like, the way you and I are, just shitting on it and predicting their imminent death, and then they look fine. Edson Barboza was one of those. Jose Aldo was one of those. Cub Swanson is maybe not quite on the tier of either of those guys, but a solid athlete.
Also, like a good deal older.
A good deal older. But he is a very good athlete. I think that's one of the major reasons that he has held on to his gatekeeper status for so long in what is clearly his post-prime. And that tends to give you some leeway for these kinds of late career decisions as well. So I remain open to the idea that he could still look fine in this fight.
Yeah, and that actually does make it somewhat interesting, because you know what?
Yeah.
I think, all things being equal, I would take a version of Cub Swanson that I trusted over Martinez.
If this was featherweight, you'd pick Cub Swanson off the bat, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'd still be like, he's still 38 years old.
Sure.
I do feel like Martinez has basically just some of the attributes which Cub has always feasted on.
Yeah.
Namely, that his defense is just backing away.
Yeah.
And you just can't do that against Cub Swanson, not really.
Yeah.
You can't just be a full person whose defense is their reach and is range, because Cub Swanson covers distance very well, and whilst he's not efficient with it, he's very sneaky with it.
He puts things together in creative ways.
Mm-hmm.
Cub Swanson is maybe the highest level innovator we've seen in the UFC, because that is his mindset. He likes to have fun and be creative and put weird kicks after weird punches and change stance and all these crazy ideas. And he will absolutely chase somebody down with a murderous 5-strike combination. Not one of those strikes being the same as any of the others. We're talking Nate.
And who like this has Martinez fought in the UFC?
Yeah.
Evie Grant.
Yeah. A bigger but
someone who throws
slower.
Someone who throws big loopy punches that are not, that are there for a purpose. They're there to push you into the next big loopy punch. Davey Grant is the planted version, and Cub Swanson is the blitzing version.
Yeah.
That is to say that, Cub is in fact probably better suited to navigate past Martinez's kicks than Grant was. I mean, admittedly, he's older and probably more frail at this point, although he hasn't particularly looked. I mean, there have been moments of fragility, obviously, against Renato Moicano or against Chikadze, where he's just been wiped out instantaneously.
Mm-hmm.
If he doesn't get wiped out instantaneously, he then looks fine.
Yeah.
And
he's been incredibly stable.
and wiping people out isn't really something that Martinez has typically done that much. You know, he's someone who breaks people down.
Yeah, well, he can find a wipeout move. You know, he can find a devastating knee or a head kick or put together a nice combination. But, well, you know, sometimes he puts together a nice combination. He is mostly a very one-and-done kind of fighter. But the knees and the kicks can be dangerous and tricky if you have to deal with them constantly. But, yeah, he doesn't tend to deck people early. And he is such a strong example of the guy. He needs to be coming forward to be effective. The contrast between Martinez coming forward and getting to choose his strikes, and Martinez being backed up at all, or even put into a more neutral engagement where both guys are standing their ground in open space. His defense is super rudimentary. I mean, I like the fact that he does have defense. He puts his guard up. And he will try to counter, and he'll try to weather storms and deal with blitzing punches by walking through them. But he also just, as you said, skitters backwards in a straight line. And Cub Swanson is more than capable of finding dozens of ways around a simple, fairly static high guard.
Really makes me want to pick Cub Swanson.
Yeah.
Gonna pick Cub Swanson.
I'm going
Stupid. He's 38 years old.
Yeah.
Cutting weight. Yeah, okay. I'm fine. I'm gonna pick Cub Swanson.
It's dumb, but again, like,
you know, you just look at the fights that he has, and I'm just like, this is the kind of guy that Cub Swanson beats up.
Yeah.
So, and in some ways, it hasn't mattered how much dynamism they've got. If it's the other guy and all they do is rely on, you know, and if they have to think about what's coming at them because they can't get out the way, it sort of hasn't mattered how much firepower they have in return. Do Ho Choi.
Yeah.
Once Cub realized that his, you know, all he needed to do was basically think about where Do Ho Choi's head was, just chase him down and punch it at it as hard as he could.
Yeah.
That was kind of it. That was the end of that fight.
Once he figures out he can put together those Nate Marquardt-ass Street Fighter combos, you're in trouble.
Charles Oliveira.
Yeah.
Admittedly, you know, these are many of these are from a long time ago, but it's just that's what Cub's good at. He's good at beating up people like this. So,
and what I love about Cub, who is genuinely one of my favorite fighters ever. Like, I love Cub Swanson's fights. We were just looking at his record. It's astounding. Like, if you go like Pat Healy style, you know, and you judge how impressive a record it is, just by the names on it, win or lose, then it's one of the craziest records ever. He's fought everyone. But even if you just go by the ones he's beaten, Cub Swanson has beaten some very good fighters over the course of a long career. A lot of them. And the thing I love about Cub, he is an innovator. He has that Kevin Holland gene in him. But he has been striking the balance between innovator and technical process-driven fighter for ages now. And that's the other thing I like, is it's not just the crazy blitzing combos. Vince Morales did enjoy plenty of success with his mobile boxing and counterpunching game against Martinez. It just wasn't enough on its own to overcome his like deadly allergy to low kicks. And he did not have the wherewithal to press forward when that's what needed to happen. Cub Swanson will. He combines those two approaches really quite fluidly. He likes to do crazy shit, but he's got a jab. He puts together combos. He hits the body. He's got decent footwork. So yeah, I think there's just way too much wiggle room in this matchup over 3 rounds for me not to pick Cub. It's going to have to be some weird weight cut related thing, or some Cub-looking fragile thing.
Yes, but potentially a combination of the two.
Sure, yeah, that could absolutely be the case.
And yeah, I'd not follow us on this pick, anyone. You know what we're like.
No, follow me.
I'm
right about this one.
I mean, just looking at it, yeah, it just seems like one of the ones that Cub should win. But it's also never pick a 38-year-old dropping weight class to fight a young fighter and younger fighter basically in their prime.
Yeah,
just don't do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what we're doing. We're morons.
If Martinez were more instantaneously kind of dangerous, if he were less defensively lapse or more durable. But Cub might knock him out.
If he had the ability to basically finish someone with a jab like Kanato Moicano can.
Exactly. Yeah, again, sometimes some weird shit just happens to Cub. That could happen. Teep to the face. Cub's KO'd in the first 30 seconds.
It's a real strong possibility.
But Cub still sleeps people, man. He also could very...
Is he?
Yeah. Darren Elkins, I know, is Darren Elkins, but that fight with Daniel Pineda was not long ago.
Yeah.
He crushed Daniel Pineda. This was a fight, by the way, where he was just getting...
both of those were cumulative beatdowns rather than...
Pineda was the one cumulatively beating him. He actually did the Martinez thing. He was hitting Cub with tons of low kicks, and Cub just countered him. He dropped him 3 times in that fight. It was cumulative of, in the sense that there were multiple potential knockout blows. It wasn't cumulative he had to break him down and finally landed enough shots that it wore him out. It was he just hurt him several times.
Yeah.
Cub's still dangerous.
Somewhat, yeah, but it's also it was a long time before that Cub actually finished anyone.
Yeah, true.
Last time he finished anyone before that was Dennis Seaver in 2013.
Hey, not for lack of trying against Doo Ho Choi.
Yeah. That's the thing, is that this is one of the things that I feel has actually driven Cub out of the top 5 gatekeeper level to the top, 15-ish level, is simply that he can throw tons into his punches, and they still hurt, but it doesn't finish people anymore.
That's true. Yeah. He's never going to have that run.
Do it a lot.
He's never going to have that run where he KO'd DeBronx and Ross Pearson and George Roop and was just knocking everyone's mouth guards flying in every fight. But he's still dangerous. He's still good. He's creative. He's fairly consistent as a technician. Yeah, I got to pick him. That's it.
Yeah. I suppose I do too.
I like the matchup, even with the bantamweight thing thrown in. I love Cub Swanson, and I like seeing Cub Swanson in matchups that, I have every reason to think should still be competitive. It's cool to me. I
wish I could share your optimism.
Well, you'll have a fight coming up in the third segment. In fact, we may as well break and get to the third segment now to do the last 2 or 3 fights. You're going to have your opportunity to be enthusiastic about an old man's death very, very soon. Let's take a break. When we come back, before we discuss any old men, we're going to talk about Askarov versus Royval, and then it'll have to be on to Assuncao versus Henry and sundry other fights. All of that after this.
Financial support is fantastic, but there are other, even easier ways to support Heavy Hands. Perhaps the best is by spreading the word. We know our fan base. You're all cool, popular people with serious social media presences. You're tastemakers and trendsetters. Okay, there are 1 or 2 of you that don't fit that description. You know who you are, but no matter what, you can always help us out by telling folks about the show. You can also give us a positive rating and review on iTunes and Stitcher, things like that. We rely on word of mouth and positive feedback to grow and improve, so thank you very much for your time and your help. Now, back to the show.
Okay, welcome back to Heavy Hands. The flyweights, Askar Askarov, Brandon Royval. Yeah, I mean, if the UFC had ever put any effort into promoting flyweights, also if we didn't have a fourth fight coming up, which again I'm in favor of, between Figueiredo and Moreno, but it does have the effect of dampening the enthusiasm for fights like this. This is a main event caliber fight in terms of its relevance to its division, or at least it should be. These are top-ranked contenders. Whoever wins this, by rights, should be guaranteed a title shot. Just if there was less of a logjam, because there's also Pantoja waiting in the wings, and he's beaten both these dudes.
Yes. And the off chance that, I suppose if Figueiredo loses, they'll technically be, what will they be? 1-1. They'll be 1-1-1. Correct?
Yeah.
How many times have they fought now? Yeah. They've drawn one. Moreno won the rematch, and then
so if Moreno wins,
he won the third one.
If Moreno wins, it'll be 1-2-1.
It'll be 2-1-1, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, Askarov, I think, is in an unfortunate position here because he's got the reputation of being the boring guy at flyweight.
Yeah, why is that?
I don't know. I mean, he's just got a lot of obviously he doesn't have a tremendous amount of personality that jumps off the screen at you. I mean, at least partially because the language barrier, but also because of the fact that he's deaf and doesn't talk very much.
Right.
I mean, but he's not. That's the thing. Not actually a very boring fighter at all.
Not at all. Especially
he's just a good grappler.
Yeah, yeah. And this is us saying this. We would shit on him if he was a boring grappler. He's a positional grappler, but his fights are still fun. I mean, to get to those strong positions, he's got to walk through hell. He's a perfectly willing and aggressive striker to make those takedowns and scrambles happen. And you do get some really fun takedown sequences and scrambles as people desperately try not to get controlled by him on the ground. And he doesn't just sit there on the ground either. He looks to progress. He's dominant. He's an inherently aggressive fighter who also gets hit a ton on the feet. So what's not to like, really?
I mean, I think he just finds himself in the position of being less full of personality and, a division of Pantojas and Figueiredos and Morenos and to a lesser extent even guys like Haikara France and so on.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, this is one of these ones where I think the dynamic is fairly clear. I mean, also, the other problem is that obviously boringer this fight is, the better it is for him.
Yes.
Because that's the instant dynamic that jumps out at you, which is that Askarov has to contain Brandon Royval in this fight.
Yeah, unless Brandon Royval, Johnny Walker style, contains himself, as he sort of did in his fight with Rogerio Bontorin. Which is another way.
You think, looks for his, tries to become capital T.
Exactly. This could be a prime case for because Brandon Royval, classically, he's the raw dog, no protection.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't worry about protecting shit. That's the classic Brandon Royval mindset. But after getting absolutely crushed by another devastating positional grappler in Alexandre Pantoja, the man with the meanest back take in the division, he did come into that fight with Bontorin, and it was full-on leaf blower style.
Mm-hmm.
And this looks like if it was a reaction to the Pantoja fight, I don't want that to happen again, because Bontorin could do that kind of stuff too. He's strong. He'll get on top of you. He'll hold you down. So if that's what that was, then he might take that approach here. I think there's a distinct possibility that he just tries to neutralize Askarov and just deny him chances to grapple. So there's a not insignificant chance in my mind that Brandon Royval might make the fight more boring than it has to be. If you can.
Admittedly, by his own standards.
Yeah, that Bontarine fight was not bad, but it was not Royval versus Cara France. It wasn't what you expect out of him.
So, in terms of Askarov versus a somewhat unstructured, wildly aggressive guy, I think it is the best. Best comparison was his first fight with Brandon Moreno.
Mm-hmm.
And it's mixed. It is kind of a mixed story there, because he was able to take Moreno down. I think even at that stage in his career, Moreno was a better takedown defender than Royval is.
Mm-hmm.
It's like just not. I mean, he's got like the Tony Ferguson thing where he just lets takedowns go and tries to immediately scramble.
He tries to be
just
like
roll through them and convert momentum and like Ranby roll.
Yeah,
and hit a switch and then just like get back or like try and get a submission.
Yeah. He tries to be like water. If he's a wrestler, then he's a funk wrestler. He's not going strength against strength with a strong takedown defense.
But it's also, that Moreno fight and also like the fight with Kai Kara France are indications that there's Askarov is not physically able quite to hang with the people at the top of the division.
Yeah,
because he can be exhausted sort of through his own, not entirely through his own offense, because he has had fights with like guys like Tim Elliott and so on, or in fact, Joe Benavidez. But he can't have wars and his own fighting style, like with his own. Still wrestling a lot.
Exactly. I mean, the crazy thing about the Tim Elliott fight is that it was a war on the feet.
Mm-hmm.
He was just walking, and even though it's not Askarov's A game, punching someone in the face when they just keep letting you, it is always going to be more efficient than, again, having to tie up with them and bodily move them around and control them.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Kai Kara France gassed him by making him fight super hard for takedowns and trading punches on the feet. And likewise, Moreno had a bit of that effect as well, because he just fought the position super hard. Man, and Royval does do that. The downside is that Royval got himself in trouble and got himself tired doing that against Pantoja. So I don't know that Royval actually... I don't know that he has the ability to outlast Askarov if it does turn into that kind of torrid grappling pace that we have seen wear Askarov out recently.
Yeah. I mean, that is one of the significant problems with Brandon Royval, I think, is that his optimal fighting style is one which I think no one can maintain the pace that he tries to hit.
Right.
That's just not really possible.
Yeah.
It's not even like a this is a flyweight pace kind of thing. It's just the level of scrambling and energy inefficiency which no one can maintain over even 15 minutes.
No. Yeah.
So he must slow down.
It's breakneck. It is like nonstop, full power, getting hit. Everything that can exhaust you in a fight is happening all the time in your classic Brandon Royval fight.
Mm-hmm. And I think that in itself is mentally exhausting for his opponents.
Sure.
Because it's real speed chess kind of stuff, where he's just he's hitting the button to indicate that it's their turn again immediately every single time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of exhausted. I think it has mentally exhausted some people when they've been scrambling with him before, because He's so aggressive at attacking every position immediately. But yeah, I think it's just not sustainable. You can't do that. And yeah, Pantoja kind of really, really showed that. It's that Royval, even if he was physically able to maintain that, isn't mentally able to. So yeah, I mean, in general, I think I just favor Askarov. I think he's been able to take down, as you said, as I said, like even genuinely quite good defensive wrestlers. No, quite good to very good. Even if Joe B was shot, Askarov was still able to take him down and control him. Pantoja is not the world's most technical fighter, but he's pretty damn hard to outmuscle.
He's very strong, very strong.
And yeah, I mean, Askarov is just he makes up for that physicality difference by being a very good technical wrestler. Oh,
and he's got enough. He genuinely has. This is going to sound silly because you just watched how much of it he didn't have in their fight. He's got enough Kai Kara France in him to also hang in the pocket, like pressing in there. Like there's a decent chance that Askarov, for example, like his defense is ducking. He just looks at the floor and ducks under stuff. Royval might duck him into a knee and badly hurt him. He's been hurt in recent fights. That Moreno fight, Moreno rocked him with a left hook on a break. Kai Kara France hurt him like 3 times. But he's super tough. He recovers well. And it'll take Royval some repetitions to find these things. And the reason Askarov will just like duck under a wild swing or whatever is to come in with a counter, either shooting into a takedown or landing a solid punch. He's like a decent enough puncher to actually be a threat in those positions. Enough of a threat as he needs to be to get back to his A game. So yeah, he's not a pushover on the feet either. But it all leads to that thing that he wants to do, which we have seen Royval lose to. So I have to pick Askarov.
Yeah,
I think he's gonna do a Pantoja to Royval. And I was mistaken before, of course, as you just pointed out. Pantoja didn't beat Askarov. Askarov out-grappled Pantoja.
Yeah.
And that is super impressive.
He's genuinely a very good offensive wrestler, and as you said, he's a very good control grappler as well.
Yeah.
If he was just a takedown guy, and maybe Askarov would keep getting back to his feet and fight and would find something. But yeah, I think it's a tough one for Royval. And I mean, given the dynamics, I'm not even sure whether I don't really trust Royval to win, even like mount a comeback.
No. I think once he starts to fight himself out of the fight, Askarov is going to be there with him the whole time.
Yeah, I would trust a Pantoja or a Moreno to be able to fight their way back into a losing performance against Askarov kind of more than I do.
Yeah,
Royval, who I think his grappling, his sheer pace means that his grappling. Anti-grappling game just starts to decline the longer the fight goes on.
It's a very meta fight. Like Brandon Royval is kind of the flyweights flyweight to the extent that
just to an insane extent.
His pace is literally too crazy for flyweight. That's how much of a flyweight pace he has. And Askarov is currently the best example in the division of that long-standing counter to the flyweight metagame, which is the aggressive wrestler who gets you down and only allows scrambles that let him teleport to an even better controlling position. So it just seems like textbook a matchup made for Askarov's style to flourish.
Absolutely, but yeah, Royval's always like thrilling and unpredictable enough that you can put him in these kind of matchups and you're still absolutely going to tune in for it.
Yeah, it's going to be great. When aren't flyweight fights great? Let's be honest. Give this division some goddamn love, people. It's almost as good as it's close to being as good as bantamweight as featherweight is, in my opinion. It's very good.
It's got. I mean, it's just got less depth to it. It's just got less fighters.
But the quality of the fights.
If they hadn't sent them all everywhere, then yeah, I'd sign off on that.
Yeah, the quality of the fights, though, with the 15 fighters we have left, they're always great. Flyweight is a nonstop thrilling show. Okay, now it's time for you to steeple your fingers, Phil.
Yes.
It's time for you to cackle maniacally. It's time for you to sort of do that move where you lick your pinky and then use it to smooth down your eyebrow. It's time for you to place your middle, your index finger and middle finger on the bridge of your glasses and push them up as you say menacingly, "Time for the glue factory."
It is time for the glue factory. I'm sorry.
Raphael Assuncao, Victor Henry. How happy are you about this, you deviant?
Victor Henry's quite good, though.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, the best Glue Factory fights are the ones where the guy's rubbish. I mean, that's the thing, is Raphael Assuncao feel like his like, Cody Garbrandt was a fantastic Glue Factory fight for him. It was like, this guy doesn't really have much technical depth at this point in his career anyway. And he got done in the most silly way possible.
Yeah.
Just being punched literally from, like, Garbrandt's toes.
Yeah.
Victor Henry, he's a good, completely insane fighter in the Brandon Royval mold.
Yeah. While being like a much better striking technician.
Yeah. He's just gonna go for it. And do mad stuff. And he's had enough of a cool regional career. I'm just kind of happy to see him doing well. I don't know why they're just setting him up against sort of moderately well-loved Brazilians rather than putting him in any of the other available bantamweight action matchups. But yeah, you gotta respect him coming in for his UFC debut after a sort of road warrior career and then beating Honey Barcelos.
What a fight that was. Yeah. So, Phil, I noticed that as time progresses, and I keep sort of throwing these, because the UFC, clearly, I mean, I know Sean Shelby and Mick Maynard both listen to this show. And they like your way of thinking. So they try to please you.
It wouldn't.
Yeah. Other than Welshmen, Irishmen, any of the lower races. Connor
will be here all day. If you want to name the people around the world who have beef with the English.
Yeah. Any of the sort of mineshaft peoples, as I've heard you refer to them. So clearly, they keep trying to give you matchups that should tickle you. Obviously, here's an old guy. He has absolutely no hope in this matchup. We're teaching him a lesson that he doesn't need to learn. Really, if anything, this guy's given us so many great fights and been such a company man, we should be taking care of him. But that's not the fight business. We're going to murder him as many times as necessary to make the point until he retires. Or we have no choice but to cut him. And as I keep throwing these matchups that they're making for you in your direction, I note that you keep coming up with increasingly Baroque excuses as to why they don't fit the, again, increasingly specific parameters of what a good Glue Factory matchup is. I'm starting to suspect
this simple. All the Glue Factory person has to be bad.
I'm starting to suspect
be like a light heavyweight.
This is some of your millennial irony poisoned shit where you're just pretending. It's a long-term sadness hedge. You've merely been pretending that you like when old fighters get taught a lesson because you can't face the fact that it hurts you as it would any moral person like me. You don't like this matchup, do you? It makes you sad. And
but that's because, Henry's too good.
Yeah.
He was worse.
Certainly you would like seeing Raphael. You enjoyed watching Cody Garbrandt knock him out. No, you
Gotta be honest, I didn't really.
You didn't, exactly. Because you can pretend all you want, but you have a soul just like me. God damn it. And it hurts you to see Raphael Assuncao, a great unheralded legend of the sport, just getting dragged through the fucking mud by any kind of currently good fighter just because he got old. It's sad.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to see it. I'd rather see Victor Henry. Yeah, it's bantamweight. There's no shortage of great matchups for him. Why isn't he fighting Jonathan Martinez? Do that.
Yeah, there are many other people they could. I mean, that's the thing. Like Victor Henry, I guess maybe this is because he doesn't have that long to fight, right? Maybe this is their way of just being like, oh yeah, you remember Raphael Assuncao from a bunch of, like forgettable fights on other cards.
Yeah.
Now, they want people to know Victor Henry. This is his get over fight.
He's getting a leg up on the well-respected corpse of Raphael Assuncao. Mm-hmm. People love Assuncao. He's a household name.
As I said, they'll vaguely remember him because he's been around for a very long time.
Yes. Yeah. Poor Assuncao, man.
But yeah, this is a kind of fight where I think Raphael Assuncao probably would have won this in his prime.
Oh.
I think he probably just would have. I mean, the thing is, he just would have taken down. I think I would trust both his consistency with low kicking and his wrestling more than I necessarily would have trusted his counterpunching. Because I think you saw against Barcelos that Henry really can defuse counterpunching because he's so crafty and aggressive. He really can just draw out counters and then counter them. But
it still would have been what exchanges we got in Assuncao's prime still would have been very interesting. Unlike Barcelos, for example, he has a jab that he uses all the time.
Mm-hmm.
He's got much better defense as well. Assuncao in his prime was one of the best defensive fighters in the entire sport.
Mm-hmm.
Very difficult to hit clean and very difficult to hit with the same shot more than once. So yeah, it would have been a super compelling matchup on the feet and probably a very winning matchup for Assuncao everywhere else.
Yes. And unlike Barcelos, he doesn't feel the need to get everything back. He would be okay with slightly losing one exchange, slightly losing two exchanges, slightly losing three exchanges, and then getting one big right hand which just shakes Henry, and then thinking, I think I've probably won this round. And maybe he hadn't because it was Raphael Assuncao, but he would think that he had, and there would be an argument for it.
The dude, Assuncao went toe-to-toe with prime TJ Dillashaw. He was a beast. Literally,
not a man that was easy to drown in volume.
Certainly not. Literally, the only reason why we've barely gone into the technical nuance of this matchup is because none of them matter. Assuncao's old. He keeps getting hurt. He can't pull the trigger anymore. His reaction times are slower. That great defense has seriously diminished as a result because he's never been a super principled defensive fighter. He had great vision. He would just see things, but he's wide open. He's there with his chin somehow 3 full feet above his shoulders, and his hands down at his chest. And his style is it's just not made to age past a certain point, and he's well beyond that point.
I mean, because people get older and their pace drops.
Yeah. His
pace was already glacially slow for a bantamweight in most circumstances, unless he found someone that he just thought he could just get free offense off against.
Yeah.
So if he's not as quick and he's not as accurate, then he won't hurt people as much, and he never even knocked people out most of the time.
Yeah.
As I said, that was the dynamic by which he won his fights, is that he would stun the other guy once or twice per round and would bank the round on that.
Yeah, he'd be like, okay, now I'm good. I've done it. I'm safe.
Yeah. If he's not stunning people, then, we saw what happened when Henry fought Barcelos. He just walked him down.
Yeah.
In
a fight where Henry did get stunned. He just doesn't give a shit.
Yeah.
It doesn't change the way he fights. And he's not just a bruiser. Like, he is himself a really consistent, principled, high output fighter. So, yep, it's Victor Henry. It's a gimme. This is really just an excuse for us to make ourselves sad. Then it was a breakdown because that's all it is. It's an old man.
As I said, in some ways, Henry's old. Had his UFC debut against Barcelos, and he won it. If anyone gets a gimme, it can be him.
I guess, but if I'm Victor Henry, I want, like... is Assuncao still a win that... I mean, maybe. I guess they did just feed him to Ricky Simone, and Simone's right on the cusp of contending. So maybe Assuncao is... Yeah, they're just... Whatever name value he has, and maybe that's just... Maybe it's literally... They're not even thinking of, do fans know Assuncao? The matchmakers know Assuncao. They've booked him 1,000 times. And so in their minds, they're like, oh, beating Assuncao means you're in the conversation. It's a better gimme than poor Hani Barcelos ever got,
Yeah, exactly.
So I guess, good for you, Victor Henry. And that's it. Pretty decent card. There's a couple other good matchups that we did not have time to touch on. Lacking a little bit of weight, but in terms of just pure bookings, what kind of action I think we can expect, you'll have a good time watching most of this card.
It's a solid fight night, and it's a nice run-up to next week's card, which is ridiculously fantastic.
Yeah, we are definitely going to have to squeeze a bonus episode, I think. Well, hold on. Let me double-check. It's not one of those... Oh, wait, what's the number on this one? 279?
280.
280. Oh. Let me just make double sure it's not one of those cards where I get all excited and then realize it only has 4 fights.
It has more than 4 fights. It has Krylov Uzdemir.
Oh, it has an entire stacked main card, so 5 great fights. Plus Bilal Muhammad, Sean Brady. Plus Krylov Uzdemir. Yeah, it's solid. So we are definitely going to be getting you a bonus episode when we get to 280 week after next, right? October 22nd.
Is that not next week's card?
You're right, it is. My brain doesn't work with numbers. I'm stupid, actually, is the reason. So we are going to be getting a bonus episode, certainly to cover those. Speaking of which, you should check out patreon.com/heavyhands and find the second Jose Aldo commentary that I uploaded there. Previously, there was Aldo versus Uriah Faber with me commenting on it. And now I have uploaded the same treatment given to Aldo versus Mendez 2, which is one of the best fights ever. So I hope you have as much fun watching that with my commentary as I did watching it for the 1,000th time and talking over it. Find our 280 bonus stuff when that goes up. It's $3 a month. You can find it. Come on. And also find us on Twitter at Evil Greg Jackson. That's Phil. At Boxing Bush. That's me. And until next week's absolutely stacked show, if you came here today for the finer points of face punching, you came to the right place. This has been Heavy Hands.
Okay. What is your brain good for?
That's a very good question.
Well, we figured this out. It was like medieval battle tactics, wasn't it?
Yeah, my brain is good for getting annoyed at movie sword fights. Yeah.
Can't believe, the man in black just, isn't utilizing his higher ground effectively against Inigo here.
Hasn't this guy read Capoferro? This is a joke. Yeah, this guy hasn't studied his Fiore. Hey, babe. What's my brain good for?
Your brain?
Yeah.
Is this being recorded?
Yeah.
Not much.
Not much.
Do you have to think about it?
She thought about it for a long while and still came up with an insulting answer. The pause would have been insulting enough.
Mm-hmm.